And one thing I wanted to jump into was an article I found online, and I thought it would help us talk about some of the things we wanted to talk about anyway. And I thought this was kind of a funny article. Full disclosure, and I don't necessarily feel the way this article portrays that maybe I do feel. I just think it's kind of a funny perspective because of the fact of, a couple of things we'll definitely get into, and it'll resonate. Some of the things they say to their dentist and don't realize it, but number one, being number one is, this article is called 10 Reasons Your Dentist Probably Hates You Too. Now, once again, I don't hate my patients. I love my patients. I don't hate my parents or anybody. But this is number one. The first thing you say when you sit down in my chair is, I hate the dentist. And this guy says, really? Did your parents teach you any manners? Did they ever teach you it's impolite to tell somebody you hate them the moment you greet them? How many times have you been greeted out in public? Like, has anybody ever said, oh, hey, what do you do? Oh, I'm a pediatric dentist. Oh, I hate the dentist. How many times has that happened to you?
It's all the time. At work, whenever you meet somebody, it's like, it's the thing to say.
So how do you react to that?
I usually laugh in public, but I was telling you when we were on our little break, I said, depending on the patient in the chair, depending on how old they are and how well they think they'll take the joke, sometimes I'll just look at them and say, well, that's good because I hate my patients too. And we laugh and I tell them I'm kidding, obviously, but it surprises them when I say that. They're like, well, you just told me you hated me, man. So I'll joke with them. But yeah, in public, I'm like, yeah, most people do. I understand it. It can be a little bit scary, whatever, right? Just kind of
after reading this article,
deflect it.
After reading this article, I started saying, hey, do you always tell people you hate them the first time you meet them, or am I the lucky one?
Yeah, that's probably a good way to handle it at work. Definitely is like, well, nice to meet you too.
Well, so I kind of want to segue into real quick. Our profession has been, I don't know if stigmatized is the correct term, but characterized as having high suicide rates, high rates of mental health, depression, even substance abuse, things like that to cope with the life of being a dental professional, which on the outside looking in, most people think all you do is sit around and count your money on the trees that are growing in your backyard, right? But that's not the case. And why do do you feel like the psychology of people, they would say, I hate the dentist, it has to resonate from the fear they have somewhere of going to the dentist or anxiety around, dental. Why do you suppose that people feel that way? And how does that affect you as a provider?
Yeah, I think it's from past experiences, right? And 20 years ago, specifically with pediatric dentistry, right? They didn't have all the tools, right, that we have now to make our patients feel comfortable, right? And so with the patients that we see, they've had a negative experience somewhere, right? Maybe they didn't go to a pediatric dentist, right? Who we are, not only primary care providers, but we're also specialists. We're trained in how to manage fearful patients. We're trained in how to give them a good experience. We have the ability to use medications to help them if we need to. But I think for the patients that we see, most of us, they've had a negative experience at some point, right? And that's all it is it's fear, and they've had some negative experience, right? And so I get it, right?
I wonder if some of what factors into that feeling negatively towards going to the dentist is also the disappointment factor, a little bit of anxiety around, maybe you haven't been taking the best care of your teeth. Maybe you have been, but you really don't know until you go to the dentist how your teeth are and how healthy your mouth is. And a lot of times that report is good, but sometimes it's not. And I wonder if some of that is factored in because of the disappointment in yourself. It's almost like a shameful experience, right?
For sure.
I know I should have been taking better care of my teeth. I know I don't floss. And I tell patients, hey, back in the day when this dates me, we have TVs on the ceilings, distractions like the name of the game. And as far as pediatric dentists go, and in fact, sometimes the parents are like, hey, the TV's really loud. Can you turn it down? It's like, no, because I don't want your child to hear what we're talking about, right? Or even figure out what's going on. I want the distraction. Right. Yeah, and this is working great. But they used to have posters on the ceiling that you would look up and read. At least mine did. Did you have that experience of looking up at the ceiling and having while your teeth are clean, they have things when the teeth were cleaned, it was usually a military dentist, and
It was just,
So no.
I was more scared of my dad than anything that the dentist could do. Right. So I went in there, I shut up and I did what I needed to do. So, you know, when I was younger, the times that we did go, you know, which like I said, when I was really young, it wasn't very often. It was probably, you know, I don't know, 12 or 13 or something like that when I finally went and remember it. But yeah. So when I went, it wasn't fun. Right. But I wasn't necessarily scared either. You know, to go, it was like, hey, once my teeth are numb, go ahead, do your thing, right? Let's get this taken care of, because the pain that I'm experiencing when I'm eating my Skittles, right, as a 12-year-old, right, is worse than, I want that gone, right? So,
did you experience
tooth pain for sure
in your life?
Yeah,
really?
Yeah, yep. And I remember, right, I just eat garbage, right? When I was that age, I could go to the vending machine and get a soda and some candy. I would do that, and then my teeth started hurting, and I was like, okay, that's when I remember just saying, I'm not going to eat that crap anymore, because I don't want to have this pain and I don't want to have to go have fillings. Right.
Did that weigh into you becoming a dentist?
I don't necessarily think that experience did. Like I said, I think it's more just that I wanted to help people work with my hands and do that, and wanted a quality of life that, I felt like it could provide me, right? I felt like it was a good option to, you know, being on call in a hospital all the time.
Yeah, for sure.
So,
where I was going with the ceiling. Oh,
no, I was going to say, go back to your question. Do I think, like, you know, people, about the disappointment that they have, right? That they're going to get this negative report. I think for our patients specifically, I think it's based in fear. For older patients, right, I think it may be kind of an excuse as to why they didn't show up for so long, right? It could be they're truly scared, but it could just be, I know this can be a negative report. How am I going to get out of this with the dentist? Well, I haven't been there for 7 years.
People don't really like to get bad news.
Right.
And so, and I think we know that. And I think sometimes their reaction at least weighs on me as a provider, you know, their disappointment or even their shock. And then, even when I appreciate when a patient tells me they're scared and they're anxious, but it makes me a little more anxious too, because I want that much more to be more gentle.
It puts more pressure on you.
Yeah, I want to have
this has to be a good experience. Yeah,
absolutely. And but even worse, you got a patient, especially when they're a little older, it seems, and they're like just it's like, okay, what's real, what's not, and it's stressful. You're trying to figure out, is this person really, you know, in pain? Is this person just really not want to be here? And that does impact my overall mental outlook for the day. If I'm not careful, I have to be disciplined to realize this is, you know, an extenuating circumstance. This is not an internal circumstance. I don't necessarily have to internalize this. Right. But it's difficult. It has been difficult for me to do that in the past.
Yeah. Hugely difficult. Right. I mean, if you have a patient and things don't go the way that you want, or, you know, for me, the way I want, right, or I expect myself to be able to give them that experience, it can really affect me, you know. It can kind of ruin your whole day, right? Because you put that pressure, at least I won't say you, I said for me, I put that pressure on myself, right? It's like, hey, I'm the specialist here. I'm supposed to be able to get this kid through this. I'm supposed to be able to do what I told the parent I was going to do. Right. And so when
but they took a day off work to be there.
Right. There's like, there's a lot of personal riding on this hour appointment. Right. You know what I mean? It's like, well, if I don't get this done, they're going to have to, you know, reschedule. It's going to cost them more money. They took a day off work, right? The kid's not going to want to come back. So there's all these things riding on the pressure that I put on myself. Right. It's like, this has to work, right? I need to do this. And so, when it doesn't, a lot of times I blame myself, right? I'm like, what did I do wrong? You know, why did I do that? Why, you know, and I may have done nothing wrong at all. It's just a 3-year-old, right? Or a 4-year-old that, who knows, you know, I mean,
doing a root canal on a 4-year-old.
Yeah. Right.
That's not good for a 40-year-old.
Right. Yeah. I mean, and so we don't know what the situation is at home. Maybe the kid didn't sleep at all, right? Maybe they were whatever, right? You know?
And one thing, let's jump in real quick. Just since I brought up doing a root canal on a 4-year-old, I just thought there'd be people thinking, you do root canals on 4-year-olds? Is that barbaric or necessary? Why does that happen?
So yes, I mean, it's definitely not barbaric. We recommend it when it's needed. because a lot of times that's the treatment of choice.
They're just baby teeth. They're just going to fall out anyway, right?
They will, but when are they going to fall out? Right. That's the question that we have to explain to parents a lot of times, because that's a question we get all the time, right? Like, why are we going to do all this? They're baby teeth. They're going to fall out, right? And we're like, well, your child is 4, okay, and they're going to have those back baby teeth until they're 10 to 12 years old, right? And so if we do nothing for the next 6 years, your child's going to experience pain, infection. We're going to be extracting teeth, as we talked about, previously. They're not going to be growing, developing, and eating correctly if they're experiencing that pain, right? And so we know as dental providers that maintaining the tooth in that arch is the best thing to allow the adult teeth to come into the correct position too, rather than just taking teeth out, right? And so we have to explain
helps growth and development happen correctly by maintaining the health of your baby teeth as well.
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And I appreciate that you brought up too that nutritional aspect of. And I don't always factor that into my discussions with parents, but I will moving forward. That was really good information to think of. Like, if you're not able to eat because it hurts, you're not going to eat an orange or a pineapple because that's going to hurt.
Yeah.
Right. And so you're going to be more likely to be nutritionally deficient, and that 100%. Impacts your entire body,
100%,
including your ability for your teeth to stay strong.
Right. Right. Yeah. I mean, it's in our patient population, 100% it affects their total body because they're growing and developing, right?
Especially their brains.
Yeah. Yep. For sure.
Wow. That's good. That's good tactical information I will be able to use Monday.
Yeah.
So thanks for that.
Yeah.
That's one of the reasons I love working with this guy.
Yeah. Thank you.
So a couple, this number 2 on the list, you come to your appointment and it's obvious you haven't brushed in days. Now, most of our patients do a pretty decent job on the day of. You can tell they come in, their gums are hammered because they've been trying to
brush today.
Yeah, I flossed 7 times on the way here.
Yeah. I brushed today. I'm like, good. Let's try and do that every day, buddy.
I am guilty of that. I have done that.
And we know if you just brushed today or if you've been brushing,
We also know if you just ate Oreos.
Yes.
Which is the worst, by the way. Please don't do that. Don't give your kids Oreos on the way to come see us. That is the worst.
You've seen that?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Oreos, cake, black stuff everywhere.
I did that one time in dental school. We were doing exams on each other. And, when that was my partner was going to do my exam, I ran in the back room and ate a bunch of Oreos and then sat down and opened my mouth.
Oh.
And they're just like, what the?
All right. This is number 3. After we've spent hours meticulously repairing your teeth, you complain about the bill.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, and thankfully, we don't have to personally deal with that too much, right? But we always know.
How many times has somebody said, "Is it going to be a boat payment for you?" Or
I hear that every once in a while, and I'm like, yeah, you're not paying for my boat payment or whatever else, right? It's like you're paying for my expertise to take care of your child,
right? Well, and how much money did you spend? How much money have you spent educating yourself to the point where you can provide the level of care you do?
Yeah,
of your own money. Before you were making money, how much money did you spend?
It was probably close to $400,000. I was
gonna say, yeah,
probably close to 400,000. And I just looked recently. Now, let me clarify that. So my dental education was probably around just the tuition. Okay. Was probably around 200,000 plus. Okay. Just the tuition. On top of that, you can't have a job, right? So you have to take out loans to live on, right? And I had a family, right? So I was taking out another 30,000 in private loans on top of that so I could live and take care of my family, and then whatever else everything's on loans for 4 years, right?
Right.
I recently looked at the tuition at a couple of the local schools here, and it was $98,000 a year.
A year. So just tuition alone.
Just tuition has doubled in the past 15 years, right? From when it was 46 when I went for 1 year, and now it's $98,000.
Is that where you went to school? Is it your alma mater? Is that the tuition?
No. It was. I didn't check Creighton where I went to school.
I was going to throw Creighton under the bus. That's why I didn't say
Yeah,
that.
no, I think Creighton's less expensive than some of the local ones here.
Oh, really?
But Creighton is a private dental school, so typically private schools are going to be more expensive.
Like AT Stills?
Yeah, AT Stills or Midwestern. Yeah, or Midwestern, right? And so just the education alone, now is close to $500,000, and that's not including what you have to take out to live on. So I've heard of people coming out of dental school with over $600,000. If you go to residency on top of that, and you don't get paid in residency, certain residencies you get paid, certain ones you don't. So if you had to pay tuition on top of that, $700,000-$800,000 in debt when you come out of school.
That's
right?
Before a practice loan of
equal
amount.
Yeah. If you go start a practice, you're taking out another huge amount of money to start the practice, right? And so, that's one of the things. You're not paying for my boat. You're helping me pay for the education so that I can take care of your kids.
Yeah, you're helping me pay for the education I received 8 years ago or 10 years ago or whatever. And you're helping keep the doors open so I can provide this service for you as a large portion of what, you're paying for. Yeah. And in fact, by the numbers, a large portion, I mean, it's a well-run dental office. If you can get to an NOI of 60% or 60% is fantastic. 40%, right? So 60% of what everything you make goes to the expenses. Right. And that's actually extraordinarily
really
NOI.
Good. Yeah. That's really good.
Because usually most NOIs,
75-80%.
Yeah. Right? Most NOIs around 20% profit. So of every dollar, we might make 20 cents, maybe. Yeah. And that's if you're meeting your overhead, and that's in good months, right?
Right.
During the pandemic, that was a different story. We barely stayed open.
Yeah.
But all that, the reason I bring that up, man, all of that factored at least into my mental health, really, the overall mental health picture, because there's an inherent amount of stress that you're under the gun from the beginning. Before I even had my first job, I was, 6 figures in debt. Right. I go to start a practice, I become more 6 figures in debt, and I have a family to feed. This is my livelihood. This is my job. I feel, do you feel that that's a factor that plays into the mental health of dental professionals?
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. I mean, stress, I think, is probably the number one thing, we're dealing with in the type of procedures that we do, and I think you've said this too, millimeters make a difference.
Yeah, we live and die by half a millimeter.
You know what I mean? And so it's not like, if I suture your arm up, cool, it's good. I mean, your body fixes itself. Teeth don't do that, right? Like, it's all on how well I do my job as, how well that restoration, that filling is going to last, right? And so there's a lot of stress with that alone. So you've got financial stress, you've got your personal life, your family, the job itself is stressful. Plus we're dealing with kids, we sedate kids, right? And so there's that whole aspect of stress too. Plus even, if you own your practice, like you said, right, you're dealing with that whole aspect too, right? You've got hiring and firing and personnel issues and all this other stuff. Even if you don't own the practice, right, you're still there, right? You're still in charge of everything. You're still responsible. You're the one that has the license, right? So it doesn't matter if you own it or not. Whatever happens that day is on my license. If I'm there by myself, right, it's my license, right? And I have to go in and take accountability for that, right? And so, there's that whole aspect, provides this huge amount of stress.
I'm glad and one thing I really appreciate about you is you mentioned, patients don't necessarily know the quality of the work that is done in the mouth, right? Yeah. They just know how they feel. They know how they were treated, and they know whether or not it hurts before and whether or not it hurts after, right? But they essentially don't know how good of a job you did. And one thing I appreciate about you, and as far as our practice, it's always been a must, a non-negotiable thing for me is the ethics of the providers has to be impeccable. We do good work. We do the right thing, and we do it well. And I appreciate that very much about you.
No, and I love working in a practice where we've got great providers right now, and I can go look and look at the x-rays from, Dr. So-and-so, and I'm like, sweet. those look good, right?
Right.
There's nothing better than 6 months later, because you don't even know on your own work, right? You know, over time, you're like, I do exceptional work, right? Because you've seen the results. But, you know, you get a new provider in, you're like, well, we're not going to find out how well this is for 6 months when we get new x-rays, right? But it's nice right now where we have great providers where I can look and be like, and I'm at the point too, I'm like, that's Dr. So-and-so's fillings and they look good. Or I'm like, did I do those or did so-and-so do those, right? Because they looked good. And then I'm like, oh, that's awesome. I love it because they're great, right? And it's nice to work with people like that and have a team together that you don't have to worry about the type of treatment they're doing. Right.
And I appreciate too that we can see the same patients, like, and I'll come up with the treatment plan and you'll see the patient, or you'll come up with the treatment plan and I'll see the patient, and we're calibrated to what we feel is ideal enough to where it's almost the identical treatment plan every time. And half the time when it's off, you know, and I'll be like, it's a little, that one part of this treatment plan is a little weird. Who treatment planned that? I look back, most times it's me.
Yeah, I know. I do that all the time too. I'm like, who did this? I'm like, I'll look at the girls and I'll be like, is this my fault? And they're like, yep. Like, who wanted to do this? I'm like, oh yeah, that was me. Okay.
From the outside looking in, it seems like, because us is like, we as humans are very receiving reassurance or satisfaction from an outside perspective is always like what boosts our morale and stuff like that. But what it sounds like in the practice that you guys are in, it doesn't receive that a whole lot. So when people dealing with mental struggles of any kind, because the thing for anxiety that I was always told was one of the practices of anxiety, don't seek reassurance, because that's what people use as like a crutch, but it helps humans like on a day-to-day basis. So like when I'm hearing your stories, it's like there's no they're like no feedback of like, oh, hey, thanks, this was great. Like
there's not, and there's no, it's kind of, you have to be satisfied.
It does happen. Like, just
as far as the quality of your work, right? Like the parents can be they can be happy and the patients can be happy with the experience, right? But you have to be content with doing a good job and knowing that yourself, right? Because the only other people that are ever going to know is like, if Dr. Carmichael looks at my x-rays and goes, hey, that's a nice feeling, right? Or this is a nice whatever.
Or if they go to a different
job.
Or if they go to a different
office, right? You know, and they may, whatever they say, right? But you're 100% right, is you don't get that external.
Yeah, it's not like real estate where they're like enthusiastically like just thanking you up and down for like a new house or something.
Well, you know what
I mean? So it's like,
but it's just like this last week. And coincidentally, since I've been healthier the last month, I just feel like there's been a better vibe in the office, and I feel like parents have been more vocal recently. At least I've noticed, and maybe I was just not in a good place to understand it. But I feel like people have been more complimentary. We do hear more. We love coming in here, or you guys are the best, or you know, I had a patient Thursday that told me they drive 4 hours to come see us. I mean, they probably drive by 100 pediatric dentists. And I asked her, I said, you know, I thank you for telling me that. It really makes me feel good. Why would you do that? And she says, you're the only people we trust.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And we have more than one patient that does that too.
Yeah.
Right. You know, we have some that come from North Scottsdale, right? And they drive the 45 minutes to Avondale.
Yeah.
Right? And they're like,
patients from Maricopa and Yuma, all over.
Yeah, I know. Like, hey, we come see you guys because we know you're going to do the right thing. And, you know, you've been taking care of our kids for a long time. And so
one thing I will say too is getting healthier, like not just, you know, getting healthy, having a daily routine, exercising, eating correctly, doing things intentionally to have a positive mental outlook. I asked you, I was like, hey, things just seem better around here recently. Like, everybody seems happier. The staff seems more friendly. The parents, you know, it just seems like there's a better vibe in the office. And I asked you, I was like, what did you feel the difference was?
You mentioned that the last time we shot.
Yeah. And you said, well, I think it's you, man.
Yeah, I did. I was like, it's you. It's you. That's it. Right. 100%.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so
when I was having, you know, when I was having, issues with depression, with our marriage, with all the things we've been going through, my midlife crisis, I felt like I did a decent job not letting it affect the outcome of patient care.
Right.
But the delivery of patient care, as far as like my demeanor, was certainly suffered. And I didn't realize what an impact that had on the rest of the office. And I started thinking, I wonder how many owners or business owners, dentists themselves are frustrated with their teams, and they don't realize maybe they're more of the problem than they want to admit to themselves.
100%, my dad he had this book called Tidbits, right? And had all these little sayings in it. And some of them were quotes from people wherever, right? I don't know where this one comes from, but he's in there. Every organization is 100% aligned to get the results they're getting, right? And a lot of that starts, I think 100% of it starts with the leadership, right? You can't, everybody feeds off of the leaders in that organization, and when the leaders are healthier, then everything just kind of falls in line with that regard, right? Your employees don't have to tiptoe around or whatever, right? Or, oh man, I don't know what's going on. Is Dr. B angry this morning? Is he upset? Whatever, right? He's not smiling. He's whatever, right? And that affects everyone, right? And so, 100%, if we're healthier, right, in the practice, I think it makes it easier for everything else to just flow, right? So
75 hard saving the dental practice and the marriage.
Yeah, that's awesome, man. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy.
Yeah, sure. Right. I like to do like 56 hard. Yeah. That's what I do. 56, 25 hard, 56 hard, and 9 hard. Those are my programs that I do. Well, but see, what I'm doing, I'm intentionally dragging it out. I was just going to say get the benefits for a longer period of time.
I was going to say, I think what you're secretly doing is making sure you stay in those programs as long as possible.
Right. Like so if I just completed it, I'd be like, okay, cool, I did it, I'm done. Right now, I just have to keep starting over. Right?
They anybody just add up, right?
Yeah, anybody can one and done. Right. That's sort of not the point.
I'll get there.
That's funny. I was trying to see a couple of these other ones.
I think on that note too, as far as mental health goes, right? The physical portion of that is huge, right? Like physical activity is a huge part of my mental health, right? And in general, I think you can make that argument for sure, right? The healthier you are physically exercising, getting out there, it does wonders, right? At least releases endorphins, right? And it just helps all around your mental health being active, right?
Absolutely. Yes.
Even if you're not struggling with some type of addiction or substance or alcohol or whatever it is, if you're just sitting on the couch being unhealthy, your mental health is going to suffer.
Yeah. If you play video games all day long, right. Or if in your free time, what you seek for leisure, if, like you said, if you're just sitting in front of the TV and just letting your brain veg out, that's not really good for your brain.
Right.
Yep. And it also isn't good for you because you realize that you let yourself down. You could have taken that opportunity to sharpen the axe, so to speak, give yourself more of an edge, but you realize you didn't. And some days you just don't have it in you. And you know what? Some days it's okay to do that.
Yeah.
Right. Some days it's okay just to take a break. Right.
But when that becomes your your daily routine, that's when.
Yeah. When your daily routine is seeking refuge from any effort.
Yeah. Right. There's a problem with that.
Yeah. You're going to kind of get out of life what you put into it for sure.
What else you got?
All right. So I tell you have a cavity and you need a filling, and you wait months or even years to let that necessary work get done. And have you ever had that happen?
All the time. And for us as pediatric dentists, that's one of the hardest things too, is because I might be frustrated at the parent, right? Because it's really their fault, right? It's not the kid's fault. I feel bad for my patient. I'm like, dang it. It's been 6 months and now instead of needing a little filling, you need that baby root canal and that crown, right? Because the parent didn't follow up with the recommendation. And I get it. There's extenuating circumstances, whatever. Life happens, right? I get finances, that, right? Yeah, whatever it is. But, come talk to us. We have ways to help, even if you can't afford the baby root canal and a crown, even if you don't have insurance, right? We have ways that we can help solve that problem so your kid doesn't end up in a situation where now instead of needing a filling or even needing a baby root canal, right? They come in and the kid's face is swollen and they can barely open their eye, right? And we're considering saying, you need to go to Children's Hospital and sit in the hospital for a week and get IV antibiotics, right? So
that's probably a shocker to some people listening, that baby tooth infections can get bad enough to where people have to have IV antibiotics? Why would that even be the case?
100%, because you have a bacterial infection in your tooth that then spreads to the bone, that will spread to the soft tissue. And now you don't just have a cavity, right? We say cavity and everybody's like, oh, okay, cool, I got a cavity, right? That's a bacterial infection of your tooth that spreads to the bone, the nerve and blood vessel, then it spreads to the soft tissue of your face. And now you have a systemic bacterial infection of your head and neck. Right. And there's a lot of vital structures in your head and neck. Right. And there's a lot of spaces. And now it doesn't happen super often because we're on top of it. Right. We know we get our kids on antibiotics when we need to, so we can prevent that. But if we make recommendations and then you don't show up for a year, right, and that next time your kid comes back, the face is swollen, 100%, you might need to go to Children's Hospital. You know, we probably I probably put 2 kids in the hospital a year. Recommend. I call up the hospitalist and say, hey,
I'm glad you clarified you recommend. You don't put 2 kids in the hospital.
We don't put them in, right? So we recommend. So
recommend they go based on their infection, not because they saw you.
Yeah, they saw me. I put it. Yeah, it's just the way it goes. Sorry, guys.
Dang, bro. Let's not talk about that today.
I'm the best, but I call the hospitalist at Children's Hospital and say, hey, I need you to admit my patient, because they have, an odontogenic infection that spread to their face and they need IV antibiotics before we can do treatment. So,
and I think, the general public, I didn't realize this until I was in my dental education, that it's pretty consistently just under 100 kids a year die in the United States from untreated tooth infections.
Wow.
And, we're not talking the third world. We're talking, that's in the United States, kids. And I don't know what the statistics are, but I'm sure there are adults too that succumb to dental disease.
I don't know what they are, but I know there's the X number, right, of adults that die from dental infections,
untreated dental infections. So it's not just a baby tooth, it's their tooth. That's what I tell the parents. Hey, this is not just a baby tooth. This is your child's tooth. Just like your tooth is going to be in your mouth until it falls out, so is theirs. But right now it's their tooth, just like your tooth is your tooth.
And it's part of your body, right? We become detached from our teeth, that they're not part of our body. We're just like, throw it away, right? Take it out, no big deal. It's like, it's just your pinky finger. Well, we just chop it off, right?
Well, in similarity, it's similar. It's similar in, I guess origin, at least, to your skin, hair, and nails, right?
Yeah,
from 100%. From the ectoderm. And how much money do most of our parents that bring those kids in spend on their nails, hair, and skin? right? And they seek that out, man. It's like priority number 1. Go to the med spa, get the treatments, get the eyelashes, get the nails done, get the hair done, get the makeup done, right? They rarely spend money, but they come to the teeth, screeching halt on the brakes. I don't know how I'm going to pay for this.
Right.
Well, why don't you just not do your hair, nails, and
got to be a priority, right?
right? Like for 1 month. And I think we're looking at a decent chunk here, right? I mean, it's an opportunity. Yeah. It is an opportunity cost in most people's lives where they have to decide. But it's like, okay, well, maybe don't buy the Gucci shoes and pay for your, I don't know. There are ways that you can decide to help prioritize your kids' teeth and their health. But I think, and most people would, if they truly understood the importance, if they truly understood the stakes and what was going on.
Yeah. And that's the hard part, is how do we help people understand that, right? Because I think as a profession, we've been trying to do that, right? We used to not see kids till they were 4 or 5. And now we're like, hey, we need to see them at age 1 when their first tooth comes in, so we can educate our parents so that we can prevent a lot of this stuff.
I think that went back to, they didn't have the treatment modalities that we have today.
And maybe, that's probably 100%.
So they couldn't handle kids under 3 years old in the chair without having a rodeo.
Right. Yeah. It's like, what are we supposed to do? And even then, right, it was like, okay, they're 3. What am I going to do? So.
Here's this one I think we can speak a lot to. This is number 5. You come to me so I can help you, but you make it hard for me to do a good job.
Yeah.
You laugh.
Yeah. I mean, it's you come in, I'll tell you what we need to do. And then you want to tie one of my hands behind my back, right? Because you don't want to follow the recommendations, right? And the first thing that comes to mind is we need to sedate your kid, or we need to, put your kid to sleep. And yes,
I'm not comfortable with sedation. Not my kid. I'm not comfortable with sedation.
Yeah. So what you're telling me is that you're comfortable psychologically scarring your kid when you pay a dentist to hold them down and do all this treatment?
Can't you just give them some laughing gas?
Yeah, laughing gas will work in certain situations, but what I'm recommending for your child, and I've done this for quite a while, is that we need to do this to give your kid the best possible experience, right? And so a lot of times I get it. It's a financial thing, but we have ways we can help you work through that stuff. But when they tell me that they don't want to pay for that and they want me to, work miracles on a 3-year-old, right? And I know it's not going to work. That's why it's so hard, right? Is because 90% of the time, I would say, maybe even higher than that, 95% of the time, we read the situation correctly and we know the type of treatment and the type of sedation or whatever we need to do to help our patients through it, But when the parents don't listen to that, they can make the whole thing much more difficult.
Yeah,
right.
Very true.
And in the end, a lot of times it ends up costing more, right? Because they don't want to pay our anesthesiologist, right, his fee. And so we try something that I don't really want to try because I'm pretty sure it's not going to work. And then they pay me to do that. And then I have to walk out and say, hey, guess what? That didn't work. Now you have to pay the anesthesiologist anyway, right? And so that happens too, right? Where it just costs more because they didn't take the recommendation.
I think part of that is, they not understanding why that might be helpful or necessary, right? So some of that's a miss on explaining that. And sometimes the parents just don't want to, they don't ever feel it's necessary because that didn't happen when I was a kid. But then you ask them, well, okay, how much do you love going to the dentist? Oh, I hate going to the dentist. Well, we're trying not to have the same outcome.
Yeah, we want your kid.
We're trying to change that up a little bit.
Yeah,
right? But then there also is the actual rational and real fear that of things that people don't understand, and anesthesia being a very big part of that.
Sure.
Right. So we have an anesthesiologist, in office at least 2 days a week usually, and we'll see 10 to 14 kids in that week under general anesthesia, because either the dental need was that much or the anxiety or whatever factors that made general anesthesia an appropriate option to recommend. But people seem reluctant a lot of times to do that because it's unsafe, and they hear every once in a while of a really bad outcome that's happened in a dental office with kids in anesthesia.
Yeah, no, that does happen very, very rarely, right? But I think parents, our news system's set up to report all of the negative stuff, right? You know what I mean? And so they hear that one case, and then that's what they go off, and that's what they're basing it off of. But that's when it's our job to, inform them and educate them on, why we need to do it, right? And the fact that it is a safe procedure, right? And doing it another way might be more dangerous, right? You know what I mean? I've got a screaming kid and I'm trying to work with tiny little crowns and I drop one and now your kid aspirates it, right? You know what I mean? So, but yeah, it just comes down to our job to help them understand better, right?
Or even trying to break things into multiple appointments. The most dangerous thing that parent's going to do is put their kid in their car and drive them around.
Yeah.
And especially traffic these days. And so the multiple appointments, rather trying to avoid anesthesia, doing multiple appointments actually is more dangerous, statistically worse for your child, because you're more likely to have a car accident than anything else.
Right. You have to drive to the office 4 times instead of getting it done once.
Right. And, the fact that every once in a while you hear about a case of anesthesia outcomes that were not ideal, speaks to generally how many cases are done successfully. Like the fact that it's done successfully, safely, and great most of the time. It's a surprise when it goes bad. It's not expected for it to go bad. It's actually such a surprise that it hits the news, because that hardly ever happens.
Because it doesn't happen. It doesn't happen that often.
Millions of kids a day in the United States receiving anesthesia and sedation with no bad outcomes.
Right.
The news doesn't report that.
Right.
The news does not report that. Today, 1 million kids receive dental care under anesthesia and no bad outcomes. They don't do that.
Right. That's just not how it's set up. Right. That doesn't get anybody to click on anything.
Right. So, but if they reported how many people died in Metro Phoenix every day in car accidents, I bet you'd think twice about driving to work the next time.
Or more. There's tons of statistics that you could throw out there, right, in that regard.
How about number 6? You call and say, my tooth didn't hurt before you worked on it.
Fortunately, we don't. Kids are pretty resilient, right? So I guess I see that more with some of our teenage patients, right? And it doesn't happen that often. Like in our practice, like I can think of like once or twice in the last year that we've had that. Like honestly, I don't get that a lot. Like
I don't either.
Almost never.
We get the opposite a lot. Like you spoke to in part 1, where the kids having pain, discomfort from their dental issues and not seeking the proper nutrition or being in pain. When we go in and are able to fix those problems and the kids recover, and the report quite often is, we didn't realize how much pain they were in, because all of a sudden now they have an appetite. All of a sudden now they eat. All of a sudden, now they're doing better and thriving. And sometimes failure to thrive cases. I had a patient recently who came in for an emergency, and he had his permanent first molar had abscessed at a young age. He was 11 years old. And his parents had been taking him to Phoenix Children's because he was having pain, but he had been seeing specialists for trigeminal neuralgia and other things, neurologists and other medical providers, because he was having tooth pain from a dental cavity. Mm-hmm. But the medical profession didn't even look in his mouth, because if they would have looked in his mouth, they would have been able to see, oh my gosh, more than half of this permanent molar is gone. Yep. But they didn't even look. They just said, okay, these are the symptoms you have. We know how to treat those symptoms. You can take these pills. So this kid was on like tricyclic antidepressants, carbamazepine, all the other things to try to get his trigeminal neuralgia to calm down. And all of a sudden I extract this molar and I said, hey, how's he doing with his trigeminal neuralgia? Like, it's totally gone. I was like, any symptoms? None. Like, it's totally gone. And it's been a couple months now and like hasn't come back at all. Leads me to believe that poor kid was probably dealing with this pain from this tooth. And he had a hypoplastic first molar. That tooth did not have a great chance of living life without problems because of the way it was formed and came in that way. But that's a rare condition, but that does happen as well. And I just felt bad for the kid, and I feel bad for the parents. How long have they been taking him and being misdiagnosed and treated for something that it's not?
Yeah, right. And I've experienced that same thing with younger kids, right? And parents are like, oh, they won't, they're going to see specialists because the kid won't eat, right? And then I'm like, well, your kid needs a ton of dental treatment, right? This could be a huge factor in what's going on, right? And same thing, like, yep, yeah, little Timmy's eating fine now, you know what I mean? After we got everything taken care of. But yeah, and in our physician friends' defense, right? I think they get about 4 hours of dental education in medical school, right? So, they kind of skip that whole part of the body, right? And so,
do you feel that'll change moving forward? Because right now we're proving there's an oral systemic connection to, oral health and your general health. So, if you have poor oral health, typically you have higher inflammation generally in the rest of your body. And we've seen with diabetes both ways. You have diabetics that have bad teeth. And so if you clean up their diabetes and their blood sugar levels, all those things get better, their teeth improve. And the other converse has been proven to be true. If you clean their teeth up and get them to optimal periodontal health and odontogenic health, their diabetes improves. And there's a direct correlation. So I wonder, do you feel that'll be changing or just continue to be a miss?
I hope so. I think it will improve a little bit, but I think that division that happened between medicine and dentistry, 100-something years ago, right? I think that's kind of, the industries have been so separated and divided. I don't know that it'll ever come back, right, and be completely integrated. But I think there's definitely going to be an improvement, with the education that physicians receive as far as, oral health, and at least, hey, let's check this, right? And I found out in residency, because we were there at Children's Hospital, right? It was always, hey, get a dental consult, right? When we have a kid with something going on like that, right? So I think there are some institutions where it is a priority and they are trained on that, more so than others.
We had combined rotations. We rotated through the pediatric residency, and then the pediatric medical residents spent some time in our pediatric dental clinics. And so there was a little bit of a shared education going on in residency, but that's in a postdoctoral level, right? That's right. When you're in your residency, you may or may not get exposed to that as a physician.
Correct.
And that was a pediatric specific residency. There were many pediatricians. And so, that's a small segment of that medical community, but I certainly think it would be beneficial to the public to have more of a broader education there, or even an open discussion, especially since Pfizer doesn't sell things that fix your teeth. So they're not really going to fund medical education any other way either. We just threw Pfizer under the bus, but it's not just Pfizer. The pharmaceutical industry, the medical lobbies, we get into a lot of politics, but it's a super complicated dynamic that has shaped our medical and dental educations.
100%.
And, you know, and it's not anything more sinister than it costs money to educate our doctors and dentists.
Right.
And it is an exorbitant cost, and there's got to be a way to help mitigate those costs, or else we will not be turning out doctors and dentists at all. Right. It's a societal problem.
Yeah. There'll be a tipping point, right, where it costs too much, right, to where people are going to be like, hey, I'm not going to go into that profession. Right. Because the amount of,
well, already, I mean, you have a son that's wanting to go to dental school. Mm-hmm. I mean, how are you guiding him that way?
So what we've talked about is that, because of how expensive dental school is, that, a military scholarship is a great way to help pay for that education. Also give him some great experience. You know, I was in the military. I come from a family of military members, and so
that's an understatement.
I think it's
about your family.
Yeah, we were all
a little humble. Yeah, whatever. I meet this guy. I was like, "Hey, were you in the military?" Do you remember your response? You were like,
"I don't know. I don't remember."
You're like, "Yeah, I was a pararescue man, right?"
Yeah,
I was a PJ, but my brothers were all Navy SEAls. My dad was a Navy SEAL. I mean, it's not just a family of military.
Well, yeah. So we were
like
all
the upper echelon military.
Yeah, we were all in the military. My dad was a naval officer. He wasn't a SEAL, but my older brother was a Navy SEAL. My younger brother was a Navy officer, and then my youngest brother is in the Air Force.
Okay. Maybe I overstated it, but
yeah, a little overstated, but yeah. So
still very admirable.
But yeah, so I think that's a great way for him to not have that burden of debt coming out of dental school. If that's the way he chooses to go, or if he goes into medicine, I'll still recommend that he does that. Because it's a great experience. It is a great scholarship. He can reduce that level of stress that we talked about, right? That can weigh on your mental health as a healthcare professional, having that huge load of debt right when you walk out, right? You're brand new. You've got enough stress trying to figure out how to be a new dentist or a new doctor, right? I mean, like, that's stressful in and of itself, even when you're trained to a very high level, right? You're still walking out, and now all of a sudden you're like, okay, I don't have a professor here to help me. I make all the decisions, right? So you've got that. And so that's what we're going to do. I'm going to try and coax him in that direction, right? And say, hey man, you should consider doing this. Do your 5 years, pay them back. And if you want, do 20 years, right? And retire. So that's kind of how we're going to
private practice.
Yeah. That's how we're going to, approach it, or I'm going to try and help him. And I think he's on board with it. I think he's open to it, and coming from a military family, I think it'll, be a little bit easier for him to approach it that way.
Well, I want to hit one more of these. We should probably wrap up. It says, number 10 is, when I tell you grind your teeth, you deny it as if I am accusing you of having a horrible disease or being a baby murderer. I think it's a funny statement.
Yeah, that one is kind of funny. And that one, I feel like, I don't experience that a whole lot either, right? We get parents with that question, right? You know what I mean? They're more concerned with it, right? They're like, hey, my kid grinds their teeth. So I think in pediatric dentistry, they bring it to our attention more so than, say, with general dentistry, right? And where they may be a little bit defensive, an adult patient with their general dentist when they bring that up. But for us, it's, I hear my kid, grinding their teeth all night long, a little 4-year-old, right? What do I do? And the answer is basically nothing, right? There's not much you can do with a kid.
Wake them up every 10 minutes.
Right.
Make sure to tell them to stop grinding.
Like, the only way you can stop is if you want to stay up all night and massage their jaw, right, to get them to stop. But the vast majority of kids grow out of that, right?
What causes that?
So we don't know 100%, right? But part of it's the anatomy of the jaw.
I was glad he got that question.
Right. Part of it's the anatomy of the jaw, right? Your TMJ joint is not very developed, right? So you don't have that kind of ball and socket locking in there with kids. It's a flatter. There's not a big eminence. It's flat. And so the jaw is more mobile. Teeth are erupting, so you don't have a bunch of intercuspation, right? And so those are a couple of the anatomical things that can lead to it. But we don't know 100%, right?
Certainly.
Sometimes medications can increase that. Stress with kids, maybe, because, that might be part of it, but I don't know.
I was gonna say, I think anxiety plays into
anxiety.
And then also too, if you have, I mean, it could be a marker for a kid in a distressful situation. It could be a marker of a normal kid in a normal situation.
Yeah.
You know, and sometimes airway obstruction plays into it.
Yeah,
but I don't believe that it always does. Like some of there was a trend like 100% of the time, you know, these kids have sleep apnea, the sleep dentistry trend.
Yeah. I mean,
but I don't think it always plays into it. So it is an indicator something's going on. One thing that's important to realize and take away though for parents, I think, is if you have a grinding patient or a child who grinds their teeth, or if you grind your teeth as an adult, it is hard on your dental restorations. It's hard on your natural teeth. And your natural teeth are the absolute strongest things that are ever going to be in your mouth. And we're pretty great at what we do, but we're not as great as your body was at making your original tooth. And we won't be that good. So, you know, anything we do, if you have a filling or if you have a crown, it's going to have a shorter lifespan if you're a grinder. Just like, you know, a knee that is, you know, if you have a knee that's operated on, it's going to have a shorter lifespan in a high profile athlete than it is in an average person to a certain extent. The amount of abuse that it takes, you know, high profile athletes also do more to strengthen the areas and take care of those things. But the more abuse that something takes, the less time it lasts.
Right.
So you got to wear what, like a mouth guard or something?
Yeah, for older patients, you know, that have their complete, you know, permanent dentition. You do like a night guard or something like that.
I'm more asking for myself because I grind my teeth.
Get a night guard. Yep. For sure. Okay. Get a night guard made. And
I didn't want to make you feel insecure, but we noticed.
Yeah. Good thing I'm not on camera.
Well, I didn't say you looked hideous. I just said we noticed you behind your teeth, bro. And that typically in younger patients, adolescents, and younger patients, we don't want to restrict growth or interrupt their growth patterns. And typically, it's not necessarily like you mentioned. Most kids will grind less if they don't completely stop grinding, you know, altogether. I'm a grinder and have been my whole life. And as you worked on my teeth, you could tell.
There's some wear facets.
Yeah. But maybe a story for another time. This man sitting next to me here shattered my front tooth one night, and then had the opportunity
unintentionally,
and then graciously took the opportunity to fix it the very next day. Yep. It was fun.
We'll need to have him back on for that.
Maybe we'll unpack that later. There's a lot to unpack.
All right. Well, that should be. It was a great show. Really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, thanks
Robert,
for having me. I appreciate it.
Thanks for being here.
It's been fun.
All right, that's a wrap.